I love these so much. Underneath of some of these, excuse me. Hello, welcome to Moonbelly Makes. My name is Katrina and welcome to my home. Today I'm going to share with you part 2 of 3 of how I made a fabric flower bouquet for my best friend Lauren on her wedding day. I did a bunch of planning and testing in part 1, so if you haven't seen that yet, I would highly recommend watching that first and then coming back to watch part 2, because I'm just gonna dive right in. In this part, I'm gonna share with you how I made the bulk of the flowers that went into this bouquet, and then a little bit of how I started thinking about how I was gonna put it all together. There are a lot of hot glue strings, a lot of my cat Pete getting in the way, and lots of petals. And if you had a dime for every time that I said I'm gonna work on the greenery and then I didn't, you'd be a rich person. Anyways, let's dive right in. Here's part 2. Since my testing in part 1 was successful and showed that the fusible web was going to work well, I decided to bond together as much fabric as possible with the amount of webbing that I had. For each fabric, I cut 2 pieces the same size, ironed it to get any creases out, and then added the web. The web came with instructions about how long to iron and on which temperature, so I followed them exactly. This product is basically like a sheet of hot glue that has a paper backing on one side. To adhere the fabrics, I ironed 1 piece of fabric to the gluey side, making sure to use a press cloth to protect my iron from any glue that might leak out. Then I peeled off the paper backing, laid down the second piece of fabric, and then ironed again. I had no idea how much fabric I needed for this whole project, except that it was going to be a lot, so I did this until the web that I had ran out. Because of the nature of what I was making, I felt that it was safe to use the scraps as well, fitting them together like a puzzle for some pieces, and it worked out just fine. You'll see in my setup here that I have 2 little dishes on top of the screen. I save any scraps that are potentially usable for something, which I've heard people call crumbs. Those scraps I put into the little dish on the left. Any hanging threads or really tiny pieces or bits of paper went into the dish on the right, which actually Lauren made herself in a pottery class. Those little bits I ended up tossing, but they could have been saved for things like pillow stuffing if I was more organized. You'll also see that I am using the black-handled scissors for the web because of the paper backing and my silver-handled scissors for the fabric. Those fabric scissors are very precious to me, and keeping them sharp is of the utmost importance. Cutting through paper can dull scissors over time, so I am pretty militant about never using them on paper or cardboard or anything other than fabric. Sometimes the paper didn't peel off super easily, and that was always due to me being impatient and not ironing for long enough on the first side. So I did this again, and again, and again, until I had a stack of fabric that was bonded and ready to go. I got through a pile of the fabric and it looks awesome, but I still have this whole box, and obviously I'm not gonna need all of it, but I want to have more options than I have. So I ordered 5 more yards of the Wonder Under fusible bonder, and that's just gonna have to be enough because that's all that the store had. I also ordered 2 more bottles of the stiffen stuff because I think I'm gonna need it and I'd rather have it. I can return it if I need to, or I'm sure I'll come up with another project where it's useful. And I ordered something else. Oh, I ordered more hot glue sticks because I think I might need those also. I wanted to do everything one step at a time. I wanted to fuse everything and then cut everything, but I want to keep the project moving. And because I don't have more of the iron-on stuff, I decided to start cutting out some flowers. So I did these last night, and again, feeling pretty excited about it. I love these. This is gonna be a 2-tone tulip. It's so nice to see the colors come together, not just as big pieces of fabric, but as actual petals. So today I'm just gonna keep cutting out petals and some leaves. I'm gonna spray them with stiffen stuff and see how far that gets me today. Doing this project in the springtime in a neighborhood that loves to garden provided tons of inspiration, but the process of deciding which fabric went with which petal shape was entirely intuitive and one of my favorite parts of this entire project. I wasn't interested in every single flower being an exact recreation of a real flower, and this allowed me to have a ton of creative freedom. Some of the fabrics soaked the stiffened stuff through to both sides, but the thicker, tighter woven fabrics didn't and just curled up. Not a problem though, I just flipped those over and sprayed both sides to make sure that every petal was saturated thoroughly. Once a few of the petals were dry, I wanted to try making just one flower to see if it really would work. I decided to start with the two-toned tulip because it was already so pretty. I made a center with a rust-colored fabric, threaded on a circular base, and then glued the petals around it, and finally, after all the testing, all the prep and waiting, I finally had a flower. Okay, it's been a few days. It's actually been a lot of days. I kind of switched gears and started making the dress that I'm gonna wear to this wedding because, of course. Remember, the date of the wedding is June 11th. I'm actually leaving here on June 6th, and I want to be done with the bouquet and my dress, which is mostly done, before I leave. And today is May 25th. So it is time to really start rolling out the flowers. I started playing around with gluing some of the petals together. So let me show you what I have. Okay, first I'm gonna show you one that didn't work. It's fine, but I hate it, so I'm not gonna use it. But this is one that I've decided just not gonna work for me. Don't like it. Because I used such good Gorilla Glue, I can't pull it apart, so this is just a casualty, a craft casualty. This one, on the other hand, I made a bunch of these, and I made these little balls stuffed with fiberfill that I'm going to glue into the center, and they'll look like that. I think these are so cute, and I'm probably gonna make a couple more that look kind of like this, but in a different color. And then I made these. I love these so much. The tulip was the one that I made first. I am obsessed with this. I have a couple more of these carnations. I love how 3D they are. I just feel like if I was a little bee, I would want to land on a carnation. Isn't it so pretty? Because these are so big, they kind of turned out bigger than I thought they would. I'm kind of decided I'm just gonna have a handful that are actually this big and then start focusing on smaller flowers to kind of fill in between. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Here we go. I got going on cutting out more petals, like this incredible orange lame fabric that had petal shapes in the design of it already. This fabric and a few others were very ravelly on the edges, so I added fray check right away to make sure that they wouldn't disintegrate as I handled them. And I made a ton of strips like this, both for the flower centers and for some lavender style stalk flowers. The rest of making the petals was pretty repetitive, so I will spare you from all of that footage. But eventually I had made enough petals, centers, and leaves that I felt ready to change gears and really focus on building flowers. Each flower has a very special place in my heart, but I won't show you how I made every single one, or this would be a 10-hour video. I do want to highlight a few of my favorites as we go through the process, starting with this peony. This peony was my pride and joy. Even though I didn't use every single one, I cut 35 petals for this one, which was more than any other flower, because I wanted it to be bold and majestic. This was also the only flower that had 3 sizes of petals. I started by cutting little slits in the bottom of the petals, so I could cross them over and glue them together to make the flowers have a slightly cupped shape. Then I made the center by taking a strip of fabric I had glued in half long ways and clipped a bunch of slits into the top folded edge. Then I rolled it up onto one end of the stem wire, gluing as I went. This created a flat circular base that I could glue the cupped petals onto. I started with the smallest size, then the medium, and then the largest. I also made a few of these lavender style stalk flowers using a strip with slits cut into it exactly in the same way as the center of the peony. For these, instead of wrapping them around at just one end of the wire, I spiraled the fabric down the wire. These were so fun and effective, and along with these purple ones, I made some hot pink ones that you'll see later. I loved these carnations. I did them in 2 sizes, 4 colors, and made a total of 8. I was making 3 at a time in this footage, but each carnation starts with 1 base circle and 6 larger petaled circles. All 6 petaled circles are folded into fourths and then glued. 4 get glued onto the base circle, like pizza slices, and 2 get their bottom corners clipped off and then glued standing straight up in the center. A little fluff, and they're done. These were so fast to make, and I loved how chunky they were compared with some of the more delicate flowers that I made. Okay, it's the next day, and I am diving back into flower making. Priorities for today are to get a bunch of fabrics adhesived together and to start kind of planning out what I'm going to do, what type of flowers and leaves I'm going to do with those fabrics so I don't end up doing too many. I think I have way more fabric that I'm actually gonna end up needing. I'm going to prioritize greenery here at the beginning at least because I want to make the backs, or the butts as I've been calling them. I want to make the butts for the underneath of some of these, excuse me. I want to make the backs for some of these flowers so that I can attach them onto wire and start to see how it's going to come together, with the greenery. I also have noticed that these flowers that I've made so far are very warm toned, and I want this to be a mix of all of the tones. I know the greenery will kind of help balance that out, but I want to make sure I have some more purples and more blues. I don't have any blue yet, so that it's just a little bit less warm. Lauren is wearing hot pink shoes. Literally her shoes are this color, so I'm glad that I have some of this. It's also, there's some hot pink in these little ones here. So I think it's definitely good that I have the hot pink in here, and it has a lot of warmth because that'll really play into the shoes that she's wearing. But I want to keep it balanced and really feel multicolored and not just like a warm colored bouquet. All right, it's ironing time. For the green bases of the flowers, which I called butts the whole time I was working on this, I cut out a few different shapes and sizes so that they wouldn't all be the same. Then I clipped a tiny hole in the center of each of them and threaded the stems through. Then I glued the whole thing to the bottom of each flower. This gave the flowers such a clean finish and covered up any chunks of hot glue or just general messiness that was on the underside of the flowers. And here's another look at that glorious peony. I decided since it was so special that it needed to have this gorgeous brocade for the butt. I cut a lot of these long skinny pieces to be like daylily leaves, and these were really simple. I just glued 2 together with a piece of thin wire sandwiched inside. I made a bunch of these and then went back to making flowers. And then I kept making flowers. So many flowers. I want to highlight these little ones because they were some of my favorites. I cut out this 5-petaled shape and glued it together as I pinched together each of the petals, which left this tiny little flower, almost like a honeysuckle. I made a bunch of them and then glued them onto a long wire that I had wrapped in green fabric. I did this also in pink later because I loved it so much, and I also made a bunch of yellow ones that I put individually throughout the whole bouquet. You'll see those later. All right, it is the next day. It is June 1st. I have until the 6th, just kind of keeping things moving. I've got my green on, I've got my green smoothie, just to keep me feeling like nature and like flowers and leaves. On that note, Josh and I take a walk after work every day, and the past couple days has been so fun because I'm just seeing everything blooming and all of the different colors and shapes and textures. And it's super inspiring for particularly the greenery, actually. Like I feel pretty solid on flower inspiration, but I'm like, what are leaves even? Like, what do leaves actually look like? Like, I think I know what they look like, but what they actually look like is something kind of different. So it's been super inspiring, and I have a couple of ideas that I want to try today. So let's see how it goes. I feel like I should show you the progress. Are you ready to see it? I'm like kind of beside myself. It looks so good. You ready? Okay. Obviously it's like not arranged or anything. I'm just keeping it in this jar so I can kind of get a sense of like how full it's getting. But oh my gosh. Look at this, is like a hyacinth. Oh my gosh. And I did this little, it's hiding in here, but this little bud. And I think I need to do more buds to kind of balance things out. So I feel like if she wanted a small bouquet, this would be done, but she doesn't. She wants a big bouquet. I FaceTimed her and made sure, because my mom was like, I think that's enough. I was like, I don't know. Ask the bride. The bride said, no, it needs to be bigger. So I'm gonna keep going. Welcome back. It is June 2nd. I leave on the 6th. So luckily things are starting to kind of come together. So let me show you what I have right now. All right, there's some arranging that still needs to happen, obviously. But I made these eucalyptus last night. I made this really pretty one last night. This one's just a center, it needs petals. Not too much to report today, I just kind of need to keep going with what I'm doing. I'm gonna iron some more fabric, cut some more petals out, glue things together, just kind of keeping the process going through rotation. So I kind of always have some fabric in one stage of the process. And I'll just show you which flowers I'm making today as I do them. I remember being young and learning that cutting out the general shape first and then going in to do the detail work is much easier than cutting the perfect shape out with the entire piece of fabric flapping around and weighing the whole thing down. So for this project, I found it easier to cut out strips of the petals first before going in to cut out each individual one. At this point of the process, I remember making sure to prioritize a range of colors and textures that I didn't already have, like that solid gold lame, this rosy pink velvet, and this vibrant glowy blue for more of those small carnations that I had already made in red. This fabric was a very pale blue lace, which doesn't show up at all on camera, but it eventually made a very beautiful flower. Then I got everything sprayed and left the trays out to dry overnight. Okay, here is today's update. This is what we have going on in the vase. And then I've got some petals waiting to be stiffened. I also have this pile of green fabric here. I was worried I didn't have enough green and I was gonna go to the thrift store, try to get a shirt or something, like a green shirt for $1 or something. But I decided to look through this bag I have of all these hand-dyed fabrics. These are hand-dyed by one of my mom's friends like ages ago. And I think they're gonna be perfect. I've already used a couple of these, like the eucalyptus here is made out of that. And then this tray, overflowing, completely unorganized, is all flowers and leaves that have already been stiffened. Some flowers that are done that just need to be attached to a wire, including this flower, which is made specifically to go on the baby's headband that I'm making. So that's hiding out over here. I stopped last night mid-flower. I really just got to a point. So this one still needs to be finished because I have more petals kind of hanging out over there in that pile of junk. Also on my work surface, I have 2 trash things. Don't tell me why. Oh, this one is for the pencil. That's why. I don't know why it's separate. I can't explain myself. And then my lunch. And then there's Pete up there chewing his bed. Hi. All right, gotta get to work. And get to work I did. This was basically my life for this entire week. I would bring lunch and a bunch of beverages to the table, put on RuPaul's Drag Race, and make flowers until dinner time, and then make dinner, and then after dinner, I would make more flowers. If I had started this project earlier, it would not have been so intense, but living in linear time is not easy for me, and unless the deadline is staring me in the face, I have a hard time gauging how far away it is. But sometimes it's really fun to immerse myself in a project, so I'm not mad about it. This day was a little special because on this day, I reached out for help. I just got off of FaceTime with my fiance's mom, and she used to work as a florist, so I wanted to ask her a couple questions about how to arrange a bouquet, and she had a lot of really great advice. The one thing that I've really been stuck on is how to do the greenery. Like I have a bunch of leaves cut out, and I've been kind of going back and forth with if I should put some on the flowers, like if I should put some like on the stems like sticking out, or if I should put some on separate stems and make like their own greenery stems. I think there's a hot glue string on my nose. And she said, do both, which was probably where I would have landed, but it was really helpful to hear that coming from her, just to make sure that all the gaps are filled in and you can't like see through to the wire. And she suggested 2 other things that were super, super helpful. One was to wrap as you go. So instead of trying to like arrange all of the flowers once they're all done, to arrange all of them and then wrap them in tape to like keep them in place, to do like a couple at a time, wrap them, add more, wrap them. And luckily, because these are wire, they can kind of bend in any direction. So it's probably going to be a little bit easier than it would be to arrange actual live, natural, real flowers. So at least I have that working to my advantage when I actually get to arranging it all together. And then let me show you this. I have this placket. I guess it's a placket. Like, look, it used to be a shirt. I don't know how my mom had this. Pretty fabulous shirt. So it doesn't, I don't know, someone took the buttons for something, but it's this beautiful embroidery. It's machine embroidered, all these different colors of flowers. And I have this piece and I have a little bit more too. And I was thinking it would be great. I can take the white part off, stitch the flowers together so it's double-sided, or I could use the Bonda web thing. I don't know, I'll do one or the other of those. And then I can make a ribbon that can go around the bouquet and also can kind of like make like a bow or like flowy ties like fluttering down, if Lauren wants that. I gotta ask. But I thought this was so perfect. I can't believe my mom had something like this, but it's just like so over the top. It's so perfect. The other thing that was really helpful that Debbie suggested was to make sure that at the bottom of the bouquet, like where all the wires are gonna come down, it's incredibly sharp. This is a pretty thick gauge of wire, and it's hefty, dangerous, you could say. So she suggested putting something like a circle of cardboard or something underneath. I might also just like hot glue the crap out of it. I don't know. Just to have something so that if it does get jammed into someone, that it's not a hazard, not a health hazard. So those were like my 3 most important takeaways from that conversation with Debbie. I'm so grateful that she was willing to share with me. Ow! Hot glue. Burn number 2. Now that I've had that conversation with her, I need to start talking about a bunch of other things because she's the best. Excuse me. So back to flowers. After talking to Debbie, I made a few more flowers like this teal one and then called it a day. By the evening of June 3rd, the bouquet looked like this. I was leaving on June 6th, so I had just a few more days of bouquet making before I had to be on a plane to Nashville. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that was enjoyable and maybe you learned a little something. Please stay tuned for part 3 where I will actually finish all of the greenery and finally put the bouquet together. I'll also talk a little bit about how I ended up making the ribbon and how I made the headband that Lauren's baby Rhea wore. She was 3 months old at the time and it was so cute. If you want more details and a little bit more insight into the process, you can check out the post on my blog. Also on my blog, as well as here on YouTube, I have more DIYs as well as a bunch of stuff in the kitchen. So a bunch of my own recipes and then also my Great British Baking Project. If you'd like to stay connected, please feel free to join my newsletter or you can find me on Instagram. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks for sharing this little bit of time with me and I'll see you next time. Bye. Do you need to sit there? You need to?